I've been on 15 series. A lot of people don't realize that because Rowan and Martin Laugh-In was so powerful for 6 wonderful years. Ruth Buzzy and I were the only 2 regulars who did every show with Dan and Dick.
Longtime radio and TV personality Gary Owens. Today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson. Can you make $1 million using just your voice? Well, certainly you can. A lot of people over the years have made quite a nice living using just their voice in voiceovers, voice acting, radio, even automated systems. Now, it's true that only a handful reach the pinnacle of success and really make a ton of money using just their voice. And that's where Gary Owens comes in. Because Gary Owens was a very popular, very successful radio personality in Los Angeles back in the 1960s. And in the late 60s is when he was recruited for a new television show, an unusual show called Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
And now, despite numerous requests, NBC presents Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
Now, over the next 6 years, Gary Owens was the on- and off-stage voice of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In. Now, even though he may be best known for that, Gary Owens actually had a very long, and very successful voice acting career. Now, he's not one to gatekeep, so in 2004, Gary Owens wrote a book called How to Make $1 Million with Your Voice. Now, keep in mind, this interview was over 20 years ago. Nobody had heard of AI and what it was going to do to the voiceover business, so a lot of his advice may be a little bit dated now. But not to worry, because the stories he tells more than makes up for that. In just a moment, our conversation.
We're about to take a step back and listen to an iconic voice from our recent past. It's one of over 10,000 interviews noted radio personality Bill Thompson did over a 30-year span. We think you'll enjoy it.
So here now, from 2004, Gary Owens.
Well, it's for anyone who wants to make money in the voiceover business. Now, that could be being a newscaster, which you were. Also, it's for people who want to make money in cartoons, commercials, movie trailers, TV promos, anything along that line. And the great part today, when I started in the business, everyone had to sound like Ken Nordine, who was one of the best, and the late Norman Rose, who just passed away, who was the voice of Juan Valdez and the narrator for the Martian Chronicles. But today, so many agencies and so many casting people like the person next door, and especially if the person next door is Donald Trump. But anyone can really get into the commercial business or the cartoon business. I've been so lucky over the years. I've done probably 3,000 animated cartoon episodes. Starting back in the early 60s, Walt Disney directed my first one at Disney Studios, and it was such a pleasure to work with him. And just a magnificent time I'm still doing cartoons. As a matter of fact, I may be doing Super Chicken's narration in a few months here, but also I'm the voice on Buzz Lightyear. Space Ghost, I was Space Ghost from 1966 to 1994. That's a long time to do a cartoon. And Roger Ramjet.
Oh, yes.
Blue Falcon, Dynomutt, Felix the Cat, SWAT Cats, Garfield the Cat. I was the announcer on that for 8 years. As a matter of fact, this evening, we're having a reunion of Bobby's World with Howie Mandel.
Oh, wow.
And I played Captain Squash, who was his alter ego on that. I'm on Powdered Toast Man. I am Powdered Toast Man on Ren and Stimpy. And so I've done a lot of cartoon characters, primarily either the narrator or the villain some time ago.
Well, one of the things I like best about this book is that, yes, it's a very instructive book on getting into the business yourself, but correct me if I'm wrong here, did you sneak in a lot of parts of an autobiography you have yet to write into this book?
Well, that's true. I'm writing an autobiography, finishing it late next year. But yes, there are a lot of autobiographical stories in there. I told McGraw-Hill, hey, wouldn't it be fun to just use some anecdotes of things that have happened? Because I've been in the business now for a long time, and it's all been good for me. It's just been euphoric as can be. And yes, there are quite a few anecdotes. One of my favorites, happened some years ago when I was working with Howard Cosell. I was interviewing Howard Cosell on his book, one of his new books. And I said, Howard, you're a barrister. Now, we're broadcasting from the L.A. Coliseum before a Rams-Washington Redskin game. And so I would get out there and do my radio show from 3 to 6 in the afternoon. So ABC would be setting up with Howard Cosell and Frank Gifford and Alex Karras and the gang. So at this point, I said to Howard, have you ever been stumped for an answer being a lawyer? Probably not. He said, no, Owens, I haven't, as a matter of fact. I said, well, I'm glad, because you're going to have to take over. I have to go to the bathroom. So I run out of the studio, slam the door behind me. Now, this is up way above the football field. And at 3 in the afternoon, only a few security guards are there. And I was going to wait for 1 minute, just letting Howard ad-lib on whatever he wanted to. Then I try to open the door, and it's locked. And I yell up and down the hall. There's nobody there. So I have to run all the way down to the Rams locker room to find a security guard. 26 minutes later, Howard is still talking. Only my engineer is in there with him. And we're going live on the air. And so as I get the door finally open, Howard, I'm so sorry. And that's the correlation between George Allen of the Washington Redskins, George Allen of the Los Angeles Rams. That's it, Owen. I'm out of here. And I said, my gosh, he's ad-libbed for 26 straight minutes on the spur of the moment. You know, how many people could do that?
Oh, well, you've done it apparently.
Well, I've done it.
Yeah,
I did it with Joan Rivers.
Yeah, I was going to say, you've got a couple of stories in your book here where somebody backstage, just something is going wrong, and they say, Gary, go out and fill for 45 minutes.
One of the strangest things that happened, Bill, was a few years ago. We were doing a Muppet special, Miss Piggy special for CBS television. And the hosts of the show were Dick Van Dyke, Rita Moreno, and myself, and Johnny Mathis. And so it's an all-Hollywood audience at the Ambassador Hotel, the Coconut Grove. And everybody from Ginger Rogers to Telly Savalas to Lou Rawls, everybody is there. And because they all want something to do with Miss Piggy or Kermit the Frog. So Kermit the Frog is the host of it. I come out dressed in a tuxedo. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this wonderful affair. Here's your host for this evening, Kermit J. Frog. And, of course, then Jim Henson. Thank you very much, Gary. Tonight, at that point, the lights go out in the old Coconut Grove. And they're fumbling around. Everybody says, what's the matter here? Something's going on. So Jim comes over and he says, Gary, can you fill for 45 minutes? And I said, probably not, because I think I'm talked out, because we did that in interviews prior to the show. And he said, well, you're going to have to. So I go out in the audience. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Go out and I see Michael Landon there, Jim Garner, and, of course, Dick Van Dyke, all of whom at that time were doing camera commercials and film commercials. So I said, come on up on stage, guys. Come on with me. Dick, you're already here, so we're all set. Michael Landon, ladies and gentlemen, the great star of The House Behind the Little House on the Prairie, Bonanza, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, of course, the wonderful Jim Garner of the Rockford Files. So I get them up on stage. They have no idea what they're going to do. And I said, for the next 5 minutes, they're going to discuss the merits of their commercials that you see on TV every day. Now, I run backstage and just trying to get my thoughts together, and I did. And I came out for another 40 minutes. But that was a saver. I don't know how I ever thought of it, but well, putting the blame on them, I guess.
See, that story helps illustrate one of the things I thought, the title of your book could just as easily be How to Make $1 Million with Your Personality, because it's more than just a pretty voice that you have to succeed in this business, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. It helps a lot. There are some people who are just great readers, though, who don't necessarily become personalities, especially in the commercial field. If you're a narrator, you don't necessarily have to have a personality with it. But for television and for cartoons, you have to exude some kind of a voice. Heidi Fleiss bought 1,000 copies of our book, by the way. She misread the title. She thought it was How to Make $1 Million with Your Vice. But, yes, having a personality does help a lot. I've hosted probably 12,000 radio shows since I've been in the business, and, I don't know, at least 1,000 network television shows. I've been on 15 series. A lot of people don't realize that, because Rowan and Martin Laugh-In was so powerful. and it's still powerful 30 years later. But first thing I ever did was I was the announcer on Bewitched for Quaker Oats. And then The Wonderful World of Disney for about 7 years. Then I did The Green Hornet with Bruce Lee.
Oh, yes.
Not as the announcer, but as a newscaster. Played a newscaster on that. And then, of course, Laugh-In, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In came along, and for 6 wonderful years. Ruth Buzzy and I were the only 2 regulars who did every show with Dan and Dick, who were the hosts, of course. And it was just wonderful. I still see the whole gang frequently.
I had never realized until I was reading your book exactly how your role on that show was shaped, how it came to be.
Well, it was kind of strange, Bill, because George Schlatter, who was producing the Judy Garland show, used to listen to my radio show every day. And I'd get notes from him, and I knew he was a famous producer, but I'd never met him in person. And he phones one day and he says, I've got a TV series that's just goofy like your radio show. People will do bad jokes, run in through the window, climb out through the door, whatever it might be. So he said, I'd like to hire you for the show. Now, they weren't sure what part I was going to play, someone professorial who sounded authoritative, like a librarian, a judge, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, someone who would yell at people, Well, Miss Feebly, get me the file on the letter W. Thank you. And so George and I and Artie Johnson and I had worked together. I owned a company with Mel Blanc for 20 years. And Mel, of course, was the voice of Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Tasmanian Devil, all these. So Artie and I had worked together with Mel for some time, and Digby Wolfe, our first head writer on the program, who, by the way, was the singing voice of Cary Grant in the movie Father Goose, and when he came over from Australia. So we're all going out to lunch, which were right across the street from the Schlatter Friendly offices. And, of course, there was the Smokehouse restaurant where the Captain and Tennille were discovered for the first time. And so we go over there, and we're writing. We had been typing. In those days, there were not computers yet,
That's right.
the way we know them today. So I've got purple typewriter ribbon Nerf on my hands. And so George Schlatter and I go into the bathroom, and we're washing up. And as I walked into the acoustic tile bathroom, I put my hand over my ear, imitating the announcers out of the 40s and 50s who were doing dance band remotes. And I said, the acoustics are good in here. And George says, hey, that's what I want you to do. You be the intermediary between Rowan and Martin and Goldie Hawn and Ruth Buzzy and Joanne Worley and Artie Johnson and Henry Gibson and the whole cast. So, in other words, I would come on after Dan and Dick are talking about some wonderful comedy routine and say, suddenly, ladies and gentlemen, in an abandoned warehouse somewhere in Creebly City, we hear Cato say, and then you could put anybody in. Goldie could say, hi, if you're a librarian, whatever it might be. So I was the intermediary for every show for 6 years at NBC television. And they put my ear print in cement at NBC. And so that was a big occasion. Rowan and Martin stood on my head. It was the day of the earthquake, February 9th, 1971. Not a good day for a publicity stunt. But it's still there. And I think that Jay Leno parks on it every day.
After this short break, Gary Owens has a little advice that may now sadly seem a little outdated.
AI is not just for 22-year-old coders. A lot of us older adults are drawing on our life experience to find unique and creative ways to use AI, at home or at work. Got an AI success story you'd like to share? Tap the link below to visit our YouTube channel, AI After 40, and let's keep learning together.
Now back to my 2004 conversation with Gary Owens.
Well, you make a really, really good point in this book in terms of, helping others get into the business, which is that anytime you hear a human voice somewhere, whether it's on, an answering machine or the voice that comes out of the Coca-Cola machine when you put your dollar in, thank you. Somebody had to voice that, and they got paid for it.
Well, that's true. I'm just signing a contract this week with a company that has me answering the phone. Lily Tomlin is part of it. There are quite a few people part of it. Rich Little is part of it. And you don't realize how many people you reach on just a dial tone kind of thing, And it is a big business. You can use your voice in so many ways. Johnny Grant, who's the mayor of Hollywood, big public speaker and a very close friend to Bob Hope and Gene Autry for years, traveled with them and would give MC jobs all the time, you know. And so he gives his tips on how to be a great MC or a public speaker. Paul Moyer, a top newscaster, tips on how to be a newscaster. I think Paul may be the highest paid Los Angeles, or not just Los Angeles, but local newscaster in America. And Willard Scott, my friend, who was there in Washington with you.
Yes.
Hi, Willard. And did How to Be a Weatherman. Robert Easton, How to Be a Dialectician. For example, on commercials and cartoons, many times you must do, say, a Russian voice or an Italian voice or whatever it might be. And this tells you, in his standpoint, he's taught Meryl Streep, Marlon Brando, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, all these people, when they do a movie and have to do a foreign voice, he's the guy who teaches them.
And apparently very well.
Oh, yes, very much. I'm working on English right now. Hope I do well with it.
Well, my wife gets a kick out of it when we get our movie tickets with the little automated kiosk. There's a voice in there that says, "Your tickets are being printed." But
that's right.
But there's a software glitch at the theater we go to. So he says, "Your tickets are being printed," and it sounds like the poor guy is stuttering. And I'm sure they didn't pay him to stutter. Your tickets are being printed. But
it might have been Foster Brooks when he was drinking.
Well, that's another really fun part of your book is that you tell the most fantastic stories. You know everybody. I mean, you've known everybody for 40 years.
Thank you, Bill. I guess I have. I've worked with an awful lot of people. Just doing 12,000 radio shows by itself, not counting television and movies. I'm working on my 19th movie in February. Jonathan Winters and I are going to be in it.
Isn't he terrific?
Ernest Borgnine. I have a company with Jonathan, and I have another company with John Rappaport, the producer of MASH.
Oh, yes.
As I mentioned in the book. Back in the early 60s, some young guys, all about 18, 19 years old, were working in our newsroom at KMPC Los Angeles, and I was hosting the afternoon show. And so I'd bring these kids in who were just wonderful, just wonderfully talented people. Albert Einstein was there before he became Albert Brooks, the famous movie star. His father was Parker Carcass, who was a big star on the Eddie Cantor show for years. But every one of those Einstein boys have done very well. So Albert at that time was still Albert Einstein. Ken Levine, who became the producer of Cheers and Frasier, was there. John Rappaport, who is the producer of MASH, or he was, and Tom Straw, producer of Night Court and the Whoopi Goldberg show. And every one of those kids grew up to be a phenomenal producer of some kind. John Rappaport used to play the Maharishi back in those days, the days of Ravi Shankar and so on. And I would say, well, it's the Maharishi. Welcome to the Gary Owens show. Thank you, Mr. Owens. It's a pleasure to be here. Did you bring any of your relatives with you today? Yes, I brought my baseball-playing brother, Pee-wee Harishi. I said, oh, really? And how about your sister? Yes, my sister is a famous singer. She is Della Harishi. So anything with Reese or Rish in the title would work. But we would do bad jokes like that. And we just had a reunion. Tonight, as I say, we're having a reunion of Bobby's World. And we get together frequently. We had a group in Hollywood, and you may find this quite interesting. Every Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, we would sit in front of Noah's Bagels on Larchmont Avenue in Los Angeles and do nothing but just tell stories and have a cup of coffee or soda or whatever it might be. And in that group, Steve Allen, Richard Mulligan of Empty Nest.
Oh, yes.
And wonderful actor, of course. Ron Carey of Barney Miller. Hal Linden. Oh, my gosh. Chuck McCann. Very big name.
Yes.
You know, Wonderama in New York. And Jack Riley of the Bob Newhart Show. And a man named Robert Blake. Robert Blake was a regular with us. And we would just, and he was a wonderful storyteller, and he'd done so many motion pictures from the time he was 9 years old playing Little Beaver on Red Ryder and The Treasure of Sierra Madre. And what a fascinating group to get together. And we've been doing that for a lot of years. I don't know where Robert is these days, but he's probably busy.
I think he's got other things on his plate right now.
I guess so.
Oh, bless your heart. Listen, I have so many more things I wanted to ask you, too, but I'm running out of time already. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or anything you thought I should ask about the book that I didn't?
Oh, you're wonderful. You asked some great questions. No, it's just anybody can learn how to do. Let's see. Anybody can use their voice to make money, and it is a great money-making business. People, it depends on the luck of everyone. That's what our business is about. But a friend of mine, Don LaFontaine, makes about $3.5–4 million every year, primarily just doing movie trailers. Yes, you'll find it. He's got a very dramatic voice. And you've probably heard his voice 1,000 times.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And it's a great business, but you can sound like the person next door. So it's a book of tips. It's not a very expensive book, and it's doing very, very well. We're in our second printing right now.
Excellent.
And Jeff Lenberg and I thank all of you people who purchased copies already and wish you well if you're buying one. Bill, thank you so much. You're a wonderful interviewer. There was a Bill Thompson in Hollywood, Fibber McGee and Molly.
Fibber McGee and Molly, but he also did one of the voices. What's the Disney movie? Lady and the Tramp.
Yeah, and he also was Droopy Dog originally.
Yes.
And
the reason I know all this is because not only do I watch the credits, but also Internet Movie Database for a long time had me confused with them because I did a brief voice part in a movie back in the late 80s in which I played radio announcer.
Oh, yeah, good.
And for some reason, they lumped Bill Thompson, the one-time 2-minute radio announcer, with Bill Thompson, the guy from the 40s who did all the voices for Disney and things.
Right, and he also was a regular on Fibber McGee and Molly. And
That's right, yes.
Wallace Wimple, who had the voice of, hello there.
Yes.
Hello. And it became Droopy Dog, Well, that's great, Bill. Well, it's nice talking to you.
Oh, thank you so much for your time.
I really appreciate it.
All righty, well, good luck to you.
Thanks so much.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Gary Owens died in 2015. He was 80. Now you can get your copy of How to Make $1 Million with Your Voice by Gary Owens by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking the link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. Heardeverything.com is where you can also find my conversations with 2 other hugely successful voice actors. My 1988 conversation with the legendary Mel Blanc.
When I create a voice, I always try to make it for all ages. And like Tweety was a little baby bird, I had to give him a baby voice. Oh, I thought a putty cat. And Sylvester was a big sloppy cat, I had to give him a floppy voice. Incidentally, that's the easiest one to do. I do my street voice with a spray on it.
And my 1989 conversation with the great Stan Freberg.
A creative writing teacher told me I should give up all hopes of becoming a humorist or a creative writer. But needless to say, the first time I heard an audience of people laughing at something that I'd written, it occurred to me that the woman was full of art gum erasers,
And, of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, the TV correspondent who discovered a great story right in her own family. My 2010 conversation with Rita Cosby.
Seeing that old suitcase, I opened it up, my jaw dropped. I saw a card of an ex-POW named Ryszard Kozabutsky, and I went, oh my gosh, this is my father.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.